Hey Ghoulie Pops, and welcome to our 4th episode where I'm going to be going over the cold case known as the Black Dahlia. We're back! Did you catch that? It's reference to Mariah Carey and the fact that we're in Christmas time now that Thanksgiving's out the window.
Thanksgiving is over. Thank God.
Of course, I'm Jamie, and with me we have...
Tara.
Gabby.
Welcome, Gabby.
Gabby's one of our newer rotating co-hosts, so we're excited to have you on.
Thank you.
So with this case, we're going to also have a trigger warning as there will be conversations of SA and graphic mentioning of torture and brutality. This case has been one of the most sensationalized cold cases of its time and arguably the century as it glamorizes the life and death of Elizabeth Betty Short, also known as the Black Dahlia. So let's get into it. Betty was born to a Cleo and Phoebe Short in Boston, Massachusetts, July 29th, 1924. She grew up with 4 other sisters, and when she reached just 6 years of age, her father, Cleo Short, ended up abandoning the 5 children and left his wife behind to raise them as a single mother.
Her father's name was Cleo?
Cleo.
Interesting. All right, go on. I didn't know Cleo was also used as a male's name.
Yeah, that's the first time I've ever heard that.
Yeah, that's why I was like,
I wonder if it's like short for something.
Cleanthony.
The son of Cleopatra and...
Of course.
Yeah.
Wait, what was his name?
Anthony.
I don't know. Was he
Mark
important?
Anthony. His name was Anthony. Yes, you're not wrong.
Thank you.
Juliet, cut that? I'm
Betty was known throughout her neighborhood and to her schoolmates as somebody that was just naturally beautiful, as well as having this bigger-than-life outlook. Viewing life through these kinds of lenses, though, brought her to leave her hometown and drop out of school at the age of 18 while she was in her sophomore year. She ended up moving to Miami, Florida, where she quickly gets a job as a waitress, and it's while living there that she meets an Army recruit by the name Matt Gordon Jr. It wasn't exactly said during this time.
Tongue twister.
It's so hard.
I'm so sorry. The cackle. Hearing my cackle for the first time. I also heard my fake laugh for the first time.
Oh no.
I heard my fake laugh on mine for the
What
first
part?
time.
Who were you fake laughing at?
It was all of us, and I was just like, because I was so anxious last time, I was like, Like, I just did I know my fake laugh, and I was like,
You're like, whose
I
ghost
was
is
like,
that?
that was haunting. Yeah, that was haunting. There you go. I'm so sorry.
She's like, I'm happy I'm never on the receiving end of that.
Truly.
It wasn't exactly said during this time how long the two were with each other, but what is known is that the relationship they made was intimate and that both kept correspondence for the next few years to follow. It was only 1 year later, in 43, that Betty was on the move again, but this time it was to Santa Barbara, California. Shortly while arriving there, she found out her father lived relatively close to where she was staying. It was about a 6 hours drive away. And after getting in touch with him, they made arrangements for her to move into his home. But this didn't last very long, and she was back in Santa Barbara about 2 weeks later. It's there that she took a job in Camp Cook from January 30th as a waitress until September 23rd of 43, when she gets arrested for underage drinking in an El Paso restaurant, since she was only 19 at the time. One thing I do want to touch on is the story with the arrest is kind of interesting. So when she gets spotted for being clearly younger than the drinking age and is questioned by the arresting policewoman, Betty actually lies and tells her that she's there in the restaurant with her husband. But that was quickly able to be disproved, and they continued with the arrest. After she was taken in and
I'm so sorry to interrupt.
No, you're
What
good.
year is this? 1943?
1943.
The drinking age is an 18?
As a 19-year-old or an 18-year-old, like, you weren't even allowed in these any restaurant that would sell liquor. And it was on the younger person if they wandered into one of these places to take rap for that. So it wasn't even up to the restaurant to make sure there wasn't underage people in there. So if a police person was in there and they saw somebody was underage, they're like, you're arrested.
So enter at your own risk.
Truly. You had to know if whether or not the place...
it's a restaurant.
But I think it was pretty clear what places did sell liquor and where you could get that at the time.
In 19 and over signs.
Yeah. So after she was taken in and awaiting action by the court, she was actually brought in to live with the arresting policewoman, which was wild, right?
Excuse me?
Truly, the woman's name was Mary Unifer, and she lived with her for 9 days, while she was awaiting the court to come up with the verdict and to ultimately release her.
Can you remind me what state this was in again? Was this
California, dude.
Oh gosh.
hell?
Oh yeah, Santa Barbara.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah. Can you believe it's for like, okay, so like imagine this, right? You just commit a criminal activity.
A minor infraction.
True. But they're like, they would have charged her like a gross amount of money. Like her fine, if she actually stayed there, was gonna like, I can't remember exactly what it is, but even like to this day, I'd be like, I'm poor, I couldn't do that.
Oh my god.
Like,
That's stupid.
yeah.
That's horrible.
But they were like, no, just go home. And she was like, oh, okay. Even when revisiting the time that Mary and Betty were like staying together, Mary was stated saying that she noticed right away that Betty was very neat about her person and clothes, and that while she was there, she also observed Betty taking enjoyment and positioning herself to show off a little rose tattoo that she had on her leg, which I thought was also kind of badass because at the time, like, you wouldn't get tattoos as a woman, you know.
Absolutely.
And she was like, babes, look at this one that I got.
Showing it off.
Look
She,
at what I
she was
did.
showing ankle.
She was showing ankle.
Oh.
She truly.
Okay. A woman of the future.
Honestly, though, I love getting to know Betty. Like during her whole entire like life story is like, I could rock with Betty.
Aww.
Like she was cool. And then once the waiting period was up and the juvenile court released Betty to return back to her hometown in Massachusetts to exchange for not having to face a guilty verdict, obviously Betty agreed, and it was Mary that ended up taking her to the bus stop. And Mary had said that she was able to confirm that Betty did get back home, because that was also something that people were confused about, because she was receiving postcards from Betty from Massachusetts.
So Mary is the lady she stayed with for 9 days.
Because like they just like struck up like this like random friendship.
They just loved each other.
Yeah.
Oh, that's cute. And then since she was arrested, she had to go back home.
Yeah.
But she was doing her own thing before that.
Yeah. She was like
Naughty.
in a nice little, it was like almost like a little beach cottage type thing that like we know today, like a motel type vibe. And that's where she was staying with roommate named Vera, which is like, I also want to say that I think the reason why she didn't go back to Vera is because while she was being arrested, she did like during questioning said that she lived with her and gave location, and the police took it upon themselves to go back to that hotel room to presumably get her belongings. And while they were in there, they found Vera in the home with 2 servicemen.
Ooh.
And one of them was in the bedroom with her, and she was like, no, that's my husband. But then they like immediately were like,
Clock that.
yeah, like the man doesn't match the pictures essentially. And
Oh!
it was yes,
Okay,
ma'am.
Vera.
Yes, ma'am.
So Vera was married.
Vera was married, and the man was serving overseas
Oh, she
during
liked
that
the man
time.
in a uniform, okay.
That's
A few of
and it was like things like that like were always being attached to Betty's murders. That whenever it was would read about it, it was like these tabloid like gossip columns that like they would give you like, here's the murder, here's completely unnecessary information about her side life that the public need to know about this Vera. You know what I mean? And like her messy situation.
No.
It was
They
things
just
like
wanted
that.
to like, yeah, that's who she hangs out with.
And that's why I was like so scandalized and why she was painted as this picture as somebody that was like
provocative.
yeah. I don't know. I think she liked the attention that these men were giving her because her father never, like, he abandoned her when she was 6, so obviously how, like, close was he? I think she just kind of liked that attention when she was able to get it.
Well, fuck these men.
Truly.
They didn't know how to fuck. Like, without
Honestly,
a doubt.
There's
Yeah.
always some level of daddy issues with like abandonment that just you're not gonna be able to get away from. Just
Yeah.
And I think that was,
Cleo.
like, why she...
Cleo.
Fucking Cleo. And, yeah, that was
It all
another
comes back to
thing.
Cleo.
I feel like he was so grazed upon that people didn't really realize how piece of a shit that guy was. Like, you're leaving your 5 daughters,
5 kids.
your wife. It was said that he, like, staged his death just to, like, feel bad and, like, move to California and then write his wife a note that saying, my bad, like, I couldn't do it anymore.
Oh my god, a guy just did that.
Oh, yeah!
He went to Uzbekistan.
That guy, Uzbekistan, it always comes back to
He
this
faked his
motherfucker.
death, but he also put like a $300,000 like life insurance policy right like in place a
Oh,
few
my goodness.
years before or months before or something to make sure his family was set. He left daughters and like a wife, and
That is so...
I think it's I don't know.
He's like,
I think
"Here's
it's
some
still
money,
an open
but-"
case.
That's so ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, how much, like...
And he had
you
like
would
a
have
mistress
to-
in Uzbekistan.
You would have to, like, the police would have to work with, like, their government.
And if they
Never
don't have
recently.
extradition, then...
I mean, that's
What?
like a lot of
Yeah.
work, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's do that.
The only, you know,
I wouldn't.
No.
I feel like,
Alright,
give the wife the money. Like, she's literally raising their kids single now. Just
Doesn't
give
that
it.
suck, though, that he screwed her over because that life insurance money now she can't have?
Yeah.
Like, if she started using it, that's like a big, huge, like, insurance for
Well, yeah, I don't know how long they'd wait until they declared him dead.
Mm-hmm.
So they wouldn't pay it out until it was declared.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Well, technically.
I digress.
Now, once Betty returns home after her arrest around October 43, she's there for a short stint again and again ends up moving back to Florida, gets a job waitressing and resides there until 45 when she decides to go back to California, but this time Los Angeles. Something to be said about the timing of it all is that in 45, the man that she kept correspondence with since 42, that Mr. Gordon Jr., was that he was unfortunately killed overseas in a plane crash. And it was even said that he had wrote Betty before his untimely death, planning a proposal to her when he got home. So with the excitement of him living through the war just to die in a plane crash before he got back to her was something Betty's mother had said could have attributed to how Betty was behaving after it all. And while back in California for the second time, she starts to live a pretty transient lifestyle. I mean, she just is known to couch surf constantly and live very day-to-day lifestyle. So it's pretty sad.
It is sad. It's just, it's just interesting. It's happening in like the 1940s.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And, like, not that it's like not happening
It's not that
then.
it's like that long ago, but
it doesn't
like,
feel like this would have happened. You know?
No.
I don't know. But yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah.
Oh, that is really sad. And that's horrible.
Mm-hmm.
To die, like, after... What war did he survive? The World War II?
World War II, yeah.
Damn.
Yeah.
That was a big one.
So they went through all of it and he just died in a random plane crash.
He survived that. And then he died.
Okay.
I'm just like, that sucks. Isn't it?
I was just laughing at that was a big one.
That was a big fucking war.
It was also known that essentially from 45 to 47, Betty would go out every night, and because she was such a beautiful woman, she didn't have any issues being asked out on dates, and because it was mid to late 40s and California was known to have been this like very transitional spot for army men, there truly wasn't a lack of dates there, and Betty was able to have one almost every night if she wanted. And it was actually assumed that because she wasn't really holding down a job for any significant amount of time at this point in her life, that it was essentially from these dates that she was able to not worry about eating. It was also said that by people that knew Betty was when the sun went down, you'd be guaranteed to find her wherever the hot spot for the night was. And although Betty seemingly had this affinity for servicemen, as many people that knew Betty have been quoted saying, she did have a few guys that she kept close and was seen either mingling with more than a few times, or friends were told how she loved to ride these specific people. This kind of behavior for Betty became her norm, and she kept this circle of meeting new men, keeping correspondence with them, and just holding on to the postcards, going back to her, going out whenever it suited her, and just being a socialite around Hollywood.
That's amazing.
Yeah. That's like that's what I'm saying. Like, I can mess with her.
Hollywood socialite.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Who doesn't pay for any of her meals? Get a girl.
Dream. Like,
And she's just like having fun. So after all these dates and all these parties, as they do say, all parties come to an end, and so did Betty's when she was last seen alive, January 9th, 1947.
I was just gonna segue like that.
okay. That's why
You're
we're
like,
here.
Betty was amazing. Love her. Anyway, she died.
Queen. Like, slay. Like, that's pretty much what we're saying. And then you're like...
But then also
and
slay,
then that was
you
the
know what I
last
mean?
day anyone ever saw Betty. It's not funny. It's horrible.
It's terrible.
I thought you were, like, going to give us more. Like, I didn't...
She's got more after this.
The timing was crazy.
Yeah, that was like literally, she like partied, had fun, great life, dead.
We didn't know that we were at that part, though. Like, she
Yeah,
still
we
had
thought
a
we were
little
still
time.
building.
We're like, years are going by. We're like, we're doing it.
Yeah.
I'm like, a
funny,
Hollywood
she's great.
socialite. This is amazing.
This is
she's
great.
doing she's doing everything right. Gets murdered.
Actually,
But I mean,
it makes
that
sense.
speaks to her
Because
case.
it's like, yeah, she's just having the time of her life, and then
yeah.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden it's cut short.
okay.
Did you see? I didn't read that.
Oh,
I'm
the cackle.
Okay.
All right, let's. Oh my god, I'm a little sad.
Yeah, so let's get a little sad. It's almost a week later, on January 15th, when word hit the Los Angeles area that there was a gruesome sex fiendish murder of a Jane Doe, and that she was found early morning in an empty lot in Leimert in Leimert Park, Los Angeles, January 15th, 1947. In fact, was spreading so quickly that the news of this murder was front page that same day. This was because the first people to arrive on scene early that morning was actually 2 reporters that worked for the Los Angeles Examiner. Here, I'm actually going to also give you guys that trigger warning because we're going to start really getting graphic with it. So back to the story. In fact, word was spreading so quickly that the news of this murder was front page that same day to multiple news outlets. This is because the first people to arrive on scene after it was called in early that morning was 2 reporters that worked for the Los Angeles Examiner, as it was common and smart practice for reporters to keep police scanners in their car during that time. Once they got there and saw the mutilated naked body of a beautiful woman who was cut clean across her abdomen in a bisection, they knew that they had a story of a lifetime, and without missing a beat, they took photos of the crime scene, sent them in along with the story to the Examiner. Once sent in, they airbrushed the photos to be somewhat decent for public viewing, and they got to printing. It only taken police another few short minutes to arrive later on scene and start their own crime scene investigation and processing. But quickly, that crime scene and the entire street became a zoo as it was filled with reporters and curious minds alike. One thing to be said is that during that time, it was very common for reporters and police to work hand in hand. The reporters helped the investigations because they didn't have a time punch to adhere to, so they would chase lead after lead for a story while feeding what they're finding first to the police in order to get that story out and be able to remain on the case without being charged with obstructing or anything like that. In turn, when police would call up whichever reporter was doing it for them, they would give that person new information on the case and that they were working on. The reporter in the article would shine a pretty light on the department, keeping the PD of that area in good graces of the public. So very much tit for tat relationship between the reporters and police. As it would show in news articles after news articles during the next few days, weeks, and even months to follow on this murder was that anything and everything involving this case was getting published to the news. One way this truly showed itself was that the investigators, because this was an immediately wide-known case, were hit with the need to find the identification of who their Jane Doe was and the pressure to do so very early on. But with how brutally beaten the Jane Doe was and how generic the drawing of her was, no one was coming forward to claim that they had the identity of who she was. However, the LAPD was able to deliver this information to the public, but it was solely because of the help they received from a reporter from the Los Angeles Examiner. That reporter, along with the public, just like I mentioned, had this thirst to get the information of who this Jane Doe was. But unlike the public, this reporter had the means to do so. And with that, the LAPD paired together with him, and he was given fingerprints from the Jane Doe, which was used in a method called telesound photos, to transmit the impressions to the FBI, and they almost instantaneously received it. From there, it took amazingly only about an hour for the folks over at the FBI to compare fingerprints received to the 104 million prints that they had on file and get the match of Miss Elizabeth Short.
Wow.
Wait, why did they have her? Oh, because they arrested her.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm like, what did this girl do in her young
Good
life?
that she would
And
have
I'm like, oh.
arrested a little bit.
Mm-hmm. But
I take back what I said.
Oh, I didn't
about the
realize
reporters.
that she was identified so quickly.
Yeah.
Why did I think the Black Dahlia was like a Jane Doe for years?
Well, it's because like the public had this like such the insane search that or need to know who she was
thirst.
because of it.
Yeah.
That they like blew up. Like, who is she? What? Like, how do we not know who she is? It's been at this point, mind you, it's been like a day. Right? And they're like, how do we not know who she is? Like, this is like...
They're like, a day?
Yeah.
How
First
dare
48.
you?
How dare you? Yeah, first 48. Everybody was like, have you not seen that show?
Have you not? Like, come on.
That's kind of awesome.
I did not know that at all. I really thought the Black Dahlia
But
was
it's
like...
the reporter that sent it to the FBI. Can you believe that? Not even the LAPD.
That's crazy, because that's different nowadays. It's like, if you get a lead, I'm sure people aren't sending things into the police.
No,
but
yeah.
that's... that they worked hand in hand, and then also the community being like, let's get on this now.
Yeah.
They're like,
Please,
They're like,
can we
figure it out right now? You don't
They're
do this.
threatening
But it
the
was like the
police.
public truly was like a make or break to like the police stations like
That's
of
crazy.
the time.
They're like, okay.
Yeah, they're like,
like,
I just want to keep my job.
Are you going to describe how she looks? Like, is she pale with black hair?
Yeah.
Okay, just wanted to remember.
The successful transfer and identification of the fingerprints was such an achievement at that time that the FBI even came out and stated it was an outstanding accomplishment. So once the victim was identified, they were really able to get into the investigation, but at the same time, they were compelled to feed the reporters information, and by doing this, they held endless press conferences. A lot of times being that the same day. So the information was being found and the public was getting literally like real in the moment, real time updates. So because of how heavy investigating from reporters, it was less than 2 days after Elizabeth's gruesome murder when reporters found out the nickname she got by one of her local gathering spots. The locals there actually compared her to the new film at the time's lead character because of her dress attire. And the movie that she was being compared to was called The Black Dahlia. And it was because Betty was almost dressed entirely in black, or had some sort of black on her attire, that she was actually given the Black Dahlia.
Oh, so she was called the Black Dahlia while she was alive?
Yeah.
That's cunt.
Mm-hmm.
That's like a dope nickname.
Yeah. I do want to repeat the trigger warning here again because we're about to really get into the graphic nature of how she was found. It was the same day that she got her nickname that she also came one of the most shocking releases of information one could fathom at that time, even to this day, which was exactly who the victim was and exactly what happened to her. During the press conference, they had a physician that performed the autopsy confirm the brutality of what happened to Betty before and after her death. That not only was she bisected in such a way that could only be described as being done by someone with a medical background, but also that because of her death was actually from shock and hemorrhage due to the beatings by a blunt object that she took to her head, coupled with the laceration she had to her mouth, meaning that while Betty was still alive, she experienced getting the corners of both her mouth sliced up 3 inches toward her ears, resulting in a Joker-like smile.
Oh my goodness.
That's like really fucked up.
That's sick.
Yeah. It was also said that during her time alive or during her time missing, she was kept and tortured. So that wasn't like she just experienced the worst of the worst that in death that she could have experienced.
How long did you say it was from the day she went missing to when she was found?
It was almost a week. It was from the
was?
9th to the 15th. She was missing the 9th.
Oh my god.
And then the 15th was when she was found.
That's horrible. I thought it was like a day.
No, yeah. So she was, and they never found like the layer or anything like that. Like where she was kept and beaten and tortured and ultimately murdered. And it was with this information now released, there wasn't any lack of fear from the people of Los Angeles. And with the public outcry to get whoever this monster was that did this behind bars, and the police felt immense pressure to deliver, and that was rightfully so. Going back to how quickly the homicide squad, along with reporters, were able to find Betty was this because FBI had her fingerprints. That was from when she worked at Camp Cook and gotten arrested, so luckily they had a pretty good place to start. And from there, they were able to find acquaintances she made along the way. It was here during this part of the investigation where she gets painted as this type of showgirl or tease. Because once the detectives/reporters, and I say this because at this time it's really hard to decipher which entity found what first, and they find out where her last known living quarter was, along with her luggage, and in there they find what becomes infamous to the case, and that's her address book. In it is countless postcards that she's written back and forth with all these different men's names in them. It's also from this address book and a stack of postcards from service that made it so there was never a lack of suspects. When I say that, I mean that during the investigation into who murdered Betty Short, there was about 50 people who confessed to her murder. And on top of that, there was also who police had pointed fingers at, making them suspects, and then who those suspects were pointing their fingers at, making more suspects. There was 3 that stood out for me for one reason or another while I was going over the list of suspects brought in and ultimately dismissed. One of them being who they had actually originally thought to be Betty Short's husband, a Sergeant P.A. Vetcher. They found this out because there was a postcard amongst Betty's belongings that speaks of her marriage to Sergeant Peter Anthony Vetcher. And this obviously at the time came to a shock since they knew how publicized Betty's murder was and that they couldn't comprehend why her husband was not yet coming forward. So once they saw this, they immediately had Vetcher detained where he was in Philadelphia. Once they got him in, Vetcher was very open and clear with the statements that where he was September of 46, himself and Amo Felt were assigned to Los Angeles to return deserters and absentees back to Fort McClellan in Alabama. While out in Los Angeles sightseeing, he met Betty. They hit it off right away, and they found themselves spending the next day and a half together. During that time, though, Vetcher mentioned how Betty knew of an O'Neill, and it came to be that Vetcher served side by side with him in the same battalion during the war. But outside of that, Vetcher and O'Neill really didn't have any relationship. That, in fact, during their hanging out, Vetcher says Betty continues to bring up O'Neill, and that she ultimately decided that when they were hanging out the next day that they were to write a postcard gagging that they got married. So Betcher playing along did just that, and they sent the postcard in. Of course, police were able to verify the two didn't get married, so Betcher, at his word, coupled with that Betcher wasn't assigned to the area any longer during Betty's murder, they moved on to the next suspect, Fernando Waldo Demera Jr. A mouthful. Now, Demera was an interesting one to me because of his backstory. Him and his family were from Massachusetts, but during the war, Demera actually fled the country and went to Canada. But while he was in Canada, he joined the Canadian Army, and he joined it as a Dr. Joseph C. Sear. So, like, completely different name.
Did he actually have a medical degree?
No, and I get into that.
Okay.
So, while serving for Canada overseas, it was documented that he had performed surgeries over there in the Korean area.
Doctor!
Doctor, excuse me.
Excuse me.
I came in here complaining of, like, a cramp, and now you're cutting off my foot. The kicker here, outside of the fact that he started using an alias, is that he actually never retrieved any kind of formal medical training prior to him enlisting. That, in fact, he also didn't just use the name Joseph Sear, but he at least went by Robert L. French and Cecile B. Heyman. Ooh, there was also something else that I was able to find, that police had arrested a Cecile French on suspicion of morals offense because this man had been molesting women in the area. Also, this French's car was found parked near the murder, with the backseat having been taken out, but French said it was done to transport machinery. So I didn't find a clear reason as to why he was cleared, but they did end up ultimately releasing French, and they were on to the next.
What the hell?
I just find it so interesting that this Cecile French was like a combination of that other guy's, Demera's, alias names.
For sure. That's very creepy. With his little doctor,
Yeah.
playing doctor.
So, like...
And he obviously learned something.
Yeah, even if he was doing all the wrong things.
It
Yeah.
absolutely would be somebody like that who would want to experiment on another human.
Mm-hmm.
For 5 or 6 days until probably the human body gave out.
So that's why he was just somebody that, to me, like, hit off all my red flags. Like, I feel like he probably should have been looked into a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
You're taking these guys for their words, and I also feel like it was people were easily able to manipulate paperwork, essentially. Like, saying, I was here at this time when I, not necessarily, like, aliases, that was huge during the time. Everybody didn't go by their birth name.
Yeah, what the hell?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So it wasn't like...
What a time. I would love.
Who do I want to be today?
Therapy.
Rachel Green, always.
Alias number 37.
So last suspect that I found interesting, and I'm going to touch on, is of a Wilford Daughtry.
Yeah, Daughtry sounds like a normal name.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, like, when police came across him, they found that he had seemingly abandoned his car at a service station not 10 minutes drive from where Betty was found. And when they inspected the car, that they found that the doors were covered in mud and grass. And when they peered inside, they said that they saw 3 different newspapers, all covering the case of Betty. And they also saw that there was little specks of blood in the back seat. The thing that I found tricky was that 2 different newspapers reported 2 different things about him, about Daughtry, which was the LA Times said that it was reported that Detective Lieutenant Stuart Jones dismissed Daughtry as a suspect because he had said that he had left it there on 1/16, the day after Betty was found, because he was on his way home from a party. But in the LA Daily News, it was reported that Daughtry had told police that his car had been stolen from him and that he had failed to report it missing. So, like, that was also interesting.
That's always weird to me when someone's like, I failed to report it missing.
Yeah, I just didn't get to it.
Just, like, so busy.
I was just so busy. My car was gone. I was so busy.
Like one of my 8
doing
cars.
errands. Like, what?
Like,
Excuse me?
Yeah.
For your 8 aliases?
Yeah. He's like, wait, which car was that?
Which car was that? Because I
yeah.
don't know if that was mine.
It's actually Dante.
That was Dante's car.
Yeah, how do you even... You have to be a psychopath to keep all of those aliases straight.
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah. That's why that Cecile French, or I guess the Demera, he was, he's just somebody that always keeps, like, coming back to me.
Did Betty have any aliases? I know she had the Black Dahlia nickname, but did she have, like, an alias?
No, she didn't go
just
by
always went by Betty.
Yeah. It was just her. She was just Betty.
I've never met an Elizabeth that's gone by Betty before.
It was for the time, maybe.
Just Beth.
Just Beth. Yeah, I've seen Beth.
Or like Liz.
It was also said that although for the time the cross between report and police was common, looking back on it, they do believe that they did hinder a lot of the investigation, which, as we know today to be true, and why reporters are no longer allowed anywhere onto an active crime scene. It was also said that during this investigation that the homicide squad that was assigned to it was made up a majority of new investigators, so they were in a way stunted because of an inexperienced team, and that they did have the fear of calling aid to FBI because of how it could look not only to them that LAPD couldn't find a murderer responsible for the gruesome killing, but also it could have looked bad for the FBI if they came in and they couldn't even solve it themselves. It was for the rest of the investigation until where we are today that there was no lack of suspect or confession when it came to who killed the Black Dahlia. But unfortunately, we still have yet to see this case close, as every suspect, lead, and path taken had gone cold. So one thing I do want to say, though, is that, like, the Black Dahlia, like, her nickname for the Blue Dahlia, the Blue Dahlia is actually about a woman who was into drinking and partying, and she cheated on her husband when he was overseas with, like, a club owner, and when he gets back, finds this out, and then she comes up being murdered. The whole mystery of it is, like, who did it, which I kind of find interesting. That was her nickname.
Wild.
Given.
That is wild. But she was never technically married?
She was never technically married. She was always,
she had
like,
rumored
proposals.
married.
Yeah.
Like, okay. Interesting way of going.
Right.
But her friend Vera was.
Her friend Vera was actually married. But it's also, like, when she has these friends or these people that she stayed with, she seemed to be somebody that could never hold down a friendship. Like, she had these friends touch and go.
Oh, she couldn't hold a friendship.
Yeah.
Or a relationship.
I think she was just so, like... Well, with men, she would keep correspondence. So, like, she had relationships kept that way. She was always writing men back and forth. They're like...
But, like, arm's length.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. There was never... I think the only guy that really, truly did it for her was Matt Gordon. And he passed overseas. And I think that's...
It's just so sad. Yeah, she kept in contact with him for, what, 5 years? Was it?
From 42 to 45, yeah.
Yeah.
3 years.
He died in 47?
He died in 45, and it was from 45 to 47 that she started exhibiting this, like, very,
yeah, so 3 years.
Loosey-goosey lifestyle.
Aww.
That's so sad. To find someone that you have, like, a connection with, and you're feeling like...
Oh, it changes, yeah.
Yeah, I think she could, like... I think from that, she went into, like, this huge depression, and she just was trying to, like, find happiness anywhere she could, and I think that she found that her happiness was, like, very... largely relied on, like, this social life, just interactive lifestyle with other people. Because she would get, like, girlfriends from here and there. Like, she would just make friends. She was so friendly. She was somebody that would just make friends along the way.
Seems like the excitement kept her going.
It did. But also, like, that could have been something that brought her to her demise ultimately, too.
Yeah.
I can't believe they've never caught anyone. Or, like...
Especially with that guy being so sketchy.
I know. And, like, being a weird doctor and stuff. And, like, how she was
weird
taken
fake
apart.
doctor.
Yeah.
Yeah, because, come on, you can pick up that some things, even if you're not a doctor. I'm sure you could pick up things being around nurses. And just think about how many times someone was like, are you sure that's right, doctor?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm sure he, like, had to watch a couple.
And he was actually also detained, too, for being a deserter for the American War. Because he left the country, and he also was, when they found out that he was operating without, like, an actual license. Yeah, he was brought to the court-martial and tried there.
Well, think about how many times you, like, not you, but people in the military have to learn how to do something like a tourniquet or something just simple.
Yeah.
Medically.
That's so true, yeah.
Because you're...
And you just kind of, like, learn it along the way.
Yeah.
Especially because it's, like, war. It's, like, you're just in this very hectic area. If you were a man, you were serving. And it didn't matter what kind of rap sheet you had.
How comforting.
Right? But also that's, like, why during the time there was 7 women that were brutally murdered. And they suspected at the hands of servicemen. All cold cases. Never were able to find.
All in California?
California, San Diego, like that area. So
yeah, how are you gonna find someone if they're deployed somewhere else or on
constantly moving? It was very interesting for like.
And I was looking, digital records for the police weren't kept until like 1980s. So it's like you can't with aliases. How are you gonna link someone together?
Yeah, now there's like all of their aliases are listed.
Yeah,
I watched like the first 48 the other day. It was like on Pluto. I was like, you just have to watch this in forensics.
When I really got, like I was telling you guys, when I really got into like getting to know who Betty Short was as a person, I just feel like Mm-hmm. She was somebody that had this big life energy and went through so many traumatic, like, twists and turns in her life, and obviously, unfortunately, ended it the same way, a big, twisty-turny death. Which is so sad. But yeah, it's literally people were still confessing to her murders.
Which is insane.
Which is so weird. It's so weird to me to confess to a murder that you did not do.
Like 50 plus people.
So that's more of like a fame thing. Like, being known for this. Which is another type of sickness.
Like a
Why?
kink. Like a little weird.
What's wrong with you?
Like, I'm going out, might as well
so
confess.
Weird. But do you think any of the people that confessed are the person who did it?
I don't know. There was this one woman that was a reporter that she said went on her deathbed that while her grandson asked her who she thought was a murderer, she's like, I'm pretty sure that I know who it is, but there's no point saying anything now because he's already dead and his grandchildren are what's left. So, like, why upheave their life, essentially?
No, that's crazy. It's such a crazy case. I feel like I didn't remember anything about her. Yeah. So thank you for reminding.
You're welcome. I feel like she definitely deserved a better spotlight than she was ever really given.
A little bit of a rebel with her tattoo.
Oh, yeah.
And that the way she her lifestyle. Black Dahlia as a nickname before she was even dead.
Yeah, imagine that. You have a tattoo in a time where people don't really think that that's a great thing.
And she just, like, wants to show it.
Your name is the Black Dahlia. You're a partier, a socialite. Everyone knows who you are.
Even that Vetcher guy, like, one of the dates that, well, essentially the day that they went on, he recalled that while they were at this restaurant, like, he noticed everybody was stopping to look at her, and, like, she just had this, like, energy about her, and, like, there was a huge line to this restaurant, and he was like, it's gonna take us, like, hours to get in. She's like, no.
She's like, I got this.
And then, she walked right in. She knew the people that worked there, and they got her a table right away.
I wish.
I wonder that, like, if whoever
what type of power
was guilty, like, didn't like how, maybe high and mighty that she, maybe not portrayed herself, but maybe,
it could have been
like a pride thing. Like, maybe if it was that
like
guy.
Wanted to knock her down a few pegs.
Yeah, like
how dare you smile
that you
at
think
everybody.
you are. Or, not even just that, but maybe, like, you don't want to be with me.
I was going to say, like, a rejection.
Yeah, but her not wanting to be with him or whoever it was not about them.
Yeah.
It was more about her and not being like, I'm not into this, dude.
Yeah.
There was actually one guy that you mentioned that. There was this one guy that was constantly brought up from, not everybody, but a few people were like, I don't know who he is. All I know is that, and the description that they gave was all the same. It was this, like, shorter man. He had darker complexion, and he was well dressed, and he would always, whenever somebody would see her with this man, he was always very, like, rough, like, very, like, there's always argument was happening between the two of them, but it never got to know who this man was, what he was to her. People would take notice.
Why haven't they created a show yet about, like, someone who goes back in time and, like, solves these type of murders?
There was, like, no that would be great. There's no, was there any rumors or inkling or anything like that she worked as an escort in any way?
There was actually a lot of rumors because
that kind of sounds
the
like
men
a pimp
that she was with. Huh?
That kind of maybe sounds like a pimp.
The guy who was getting rough.
Could have been, but, like, the...
Short king.
Short king.
Love that he was short. I
love that. Yeah, they were like, he was short.
You want to hear something horrible? I was listening to a podcast, and it was about, like, a case, and this one podcast always plays, the 911 call so much, and I, like, usually skip them, but whatever.
Yeah.
The guy who was describing the suspect that, like shot somebody, they were like, he was like, he said that she was a heavy-set woman who hasn't run in a while. I was like...
It's like those things on TikTok.
I was like, drag her, like, drag pink. That's what I said in my mind. I was like, drag pink. I was like, oh, how humbling. I'm like, I get you have to say heavy set because you're describing her, but, like
hasn't run in a while.
How do you make that observation? How do you
like you took a little, like, creative freedom to, like,
ma'am, please take a breath. What are you doing?
Take a breath.
It's horrible. I was
it's
like,
not worth it.
I was like, she deserved it because she was a horrible person, but, like, oof.
I'll
never think of this woman in any other way. She definitely hasn't run in a while.
I would have to be in therapy for
like,
the rest
he's
of my
in
life.
Like, a high stress situation, but he took the time. to like drag her. Like he took the time to just read her to filth. He's
like, no, listen, this is gonna be great when I listen to this back.
He goes, wait. She's like, can you describe the woman? He's like, are you recording?
Is this thing on?
She's heavy set. She definitely hasn't run in a while. She's like, ooh.
She's zigzagging.
So yeah.
I don't think she understands.
He's like, yeah.
Knees are buckling.
She's like, what do you mean? Does she have like a limp or something? He's like, no, just
I
clearly hasn't run probably since the mile in high school. And it was a while ago. I know me. I'm like, oh my god.
I can just tell.
I went jogging the next day because I was like, I can't be like that.
Oddly enough, new story about me. I've started to work out.
Joined a run club.
That's your new inspirational quote on your mirror.
Will not be labeled as.
Clearly hasn't run in a while. I was like, oh my god, that was the best thing I've ever heard. Okay, sorry. I just had to tell that.
That's amazing.
You had to call that he was short.
Oh no, but you said
every single one of them was like shorty, big short.
They're like,
they were all saying he was short.
Yeah,
short.
Like they would not describe him without being short.
Beautiful, gorgeous, short.
Yeah.
Wasn't her name Elizabeth Short?
Oh, also he apparently the short king would come around, and whenever she would like rack up this like bill of like not paying the hotels or wherever she was staying, he would come and pay her debt for her.
Pimp.
So, but
like
also,
a pimp.
Like could be,
so you're
but
saying,
like you're saying like a pimp.
The only thing is that like if she was a pimp, why weren't these? Well, I guess if the men were married, they wouldn't like necessarily be like.
Yeah, because I'm having multiple men. Okay, I'm not trying to drag her name. Would you please cut this? But like, if she's having multiple men in one room, like not at the same time. Like,
no, that's Vera.
That was Vera with the two men.
Yeah. No, but she was just cheating on a man while or she was also escorting.
Who, Vera? I think she was just cheating. I don't think she was escorting.
But
really
I'm saying Elizabeth Short was always in hotel rooms.
She, for the most part, would sit, but that's not uncommon either for that time of like a drifter. Like for somebody that. I mean, yeah, I think there's definitely substantial why, like, that's what you're saying is why people did believe that she was,
could have
been, yeah, an escort. The only thing is, like, I find interesting is that they were only really able to confirm that she had any relations with, like, 2 or 3 men at most. But again, yeah, there's been a lot of people that called her outright a prostitute, so.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Rude.
I just think they can only confirm, like, a couple men, maybe it was because they were married, the other men.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
No one's gonna, especially back in that day, no one's coming.
I was ratting anybody out.
But that was like,
we're good.
Surprisingly also, like, everybody was cheating on everybody. That was like a thing. I don't know if it was just because the circle that she was like, kept close to her, and again, could speak to maybe potentially her being an escort. But yeah. But I mean, she also stayed with somebody that was, like this nighttime nurse for the hospital that she would like, have overnight works, and she was just like a buddy. Then that one girl also talked mad-ish about her and was like, she don't pay for shit. The guy's like, I'm just trying to hit it and quit it.
How else are you getting, I mean, like, I don't know.
Wait, why should she pay for anything?
Like, split rent.
Oh.
Because she was there, yeah.
Oh,
which spoke to why that guy would always come around and like pay her debts, yeah.
What is he getting out of it?
Mm-hmm.
Very sad. Well, you did a very good job.
Thank you.
Yeah, I've learned a lot about Betty.
No, Betty Short. All right, and that was our 4th episode. So we will be catching you guys in the shadows, and stay ghouly. Clap it.